What is up, everybody? This is your host Superside, and welcome back to another video. And in this video, I'm going to be telling you, in my opinion, the best iPad in the history of iPads. So, first of all, let's go to the iPad Wikipedia. I actually really love this Wikipedia. The iPad section is really useful. It's got so much interesting information there, and this here is my favorite chart of all. Like, they've got amazing charts, like sales charts. Interesting because it sort of like took off, and then it was really booming through. I guess it would have been in correlation when they released it, through 2013, 2014, started 2015, and so it sort of come down a bit. But I mean, it's still pretty steady with, I'd say, about 10 million iPads every year. And then down at the bottom, they've got comparisons, which is super helpful. And then at the bottom, they have this here, which I find it a little bit hard. I mean, it's not like I find it a little bit hard to understand. I mean, I can understand it, but it's not like it's just quite difficult with like a 32 there. You're like, oh yeah, that was. I mean, it's fine. It's just not my favorite of charts. Anyway, this here is the really cool chart right here, which has. I mean, I feel like they could add a couple more tabs. Like, I mean, look at all that wasted space right there. I mean, if you're doing an access, man, people would be like, no. Anyway. So this here is the cool chart, and it has three main distinct categories at the moment. It's got these ones here in grey, these ones here in blue, and these ones here in green. So, and the grey ones mean it discontinued, it unsupported. So like as in, well, but the thing is, it's not like not supported as in like Windows XP. Like if that's not supported, you have serious security issues like WannaCry or whatnot. With computers, with desktop computers, that's a major issue, like security flaw. Like you basically, well, like lots of people then get new computers or upgrade them if they can, but if they can't, they have to get a new computer because that one's not secure anymore. There we go. As much as I love Windows XP and whatnot, Windows 7, which at the start of this year in January has sadly come to an end in support. Was it the 14th of January? But anyway, with iPads, it doesn't really. It doesn't. I'd almost say it doesn't really mean anything if it comes to the end of the support. And there's an interesting thing about like what iPads you could take back for support, and up to a certain iOS they take it and look at it. So I guess as in support for repairs, but in terms of security support, it's not like as soon as it comes out, it's not like iPad is going to get hacked. I mean, it's probably possible. I'm sure it's happened, but it's not like iPads get. To the best of my knowledge, are getting hacked on mass scale. Like I don't really hear much about iPad just getting hacked. So, in other words, I'm just saying that if it stops getting supported, it doesn't mean that you have to chuck out your iPad, because it's still totally fine and good to use. So, these here are the three different categories. So, it's also weird, because with iPads, like, you sort of have with computers, you have so many options with a CPU, with GPU. With iPads, you're like completely at the mercy of what ones Apple release. It's not like custom build iPads or whatnot. I'm sure some people can. Shout out to Mark Robot. I don't think he's built custom built an iPad. Well, then there'd be trademarks. It was Apple. And I always find it weird how there's like the iOS versus Android, and they're both solid chunks of the share market. So like a game company releasing a game generally would not want to leave out one. I mean, they could. There are games that are only on iOS and some that are only on Android, especially the ones in beta, but they normally come global because it's just such a massive share, you wouldn't want to miss out on either. But it's so weird, like, iOS is just literally just Apple, whereas Android is like everything. So it's crazy, but this kind of little section here, I did a graph, I should have got up the graph. Yeah, anyway, it's just like this Apple is just so powerful with, their few devices, the iPads, the phones, and in the iPhone and the iPod Touch, just as a mix, I think just those three, and then the iPad Shuffles and whatnot, just a mix of those few things, is like creates a massive, market, and as you can see with the sales, just millions and millions of devices, and most games, the Supercell ones, it's all iOS 9 or above can support them, I think. And so, like, all of these devices, with the exception of the iPad, can't be supported. So that one's gone now. That didn't last very long at all. Yeah, it's crazy. The first device ever had the least support of any like iPad in the history. Like that's crazy. Yeah, the iPad 2 had a solid run all the way to 2016. And it's cool because it's weird because I was looking at this chart ages ago, and like back in the day, like these were all like blue, and now it's like what the hang? It's all like this. So yeah, okay, so there's just so much cool stuff to talk about iPads. I love iPads. I think iPads are wonderful. I've never had an iPhone. I got given a phone, like it was a $200 phone in 2013, and then that's the phone I had for years non-stop. And it worked fine. I didn't really use a phone much, but iPad was just awesome. So, for example, so the very first experience I had with an iPad was is probably in 2011, and we had a family iPad 2. So that was the very first one and play good old Subway Surfers, good old Fruit Ninja. There's a couple of CSR Racing. I didn't play that much. I wasn't very good at that. There was a couple of other ones that were there as well. That were just really fun. So that was iPad 2. So that was way back in 2011. I didn't play it much, like sort of 15 minutes a day. And anyway, then a few years later, fast forward all the way to 2014, I got an iPad Air. So an iPad Air. So this one here. This is the blue one here. Now this is the one that's responsible for every single Heyday 2017 video on my channel. Unless I recorded them on the computer, this here is responsible for every game, every video, like Heyday video, and even non-Heyday videos, just game reviews, just any video like about approximately mid-July, and then the location-based games that I started getting into, like there was Jurassic World Alive, there was a couple of other ones that I played which were really fun. Delta T, that was, and so I had this for years, and I still have it. I don't really use this one much anymore. Well, no, I don't use it at all for YouTube. But for the whole of 2017, this was in use, and for about the second half. So a year and a half worth of YouTube use, and before that, from 2014 all the way, to mid 2018. So this was solid. This lasted me awesomely, and it was under support the whole time. So it was wonderful for what it is, and it's still good quality to play Heyday in that. But then eventually it started, like with Battlelands, it could handle it, and it was still Battlelands was available on it, but it started to get like a bit like laggy, like you couldn't, it was not smooth footage. It was really just not ideal, and obviously if it's struggling with Battlelands, there'll be other games it's starting to struggle with, so it started to not really cope with more modern games. So I thought, okay, I need to get something new that can actually get, fresh quality footage of games, and so then that was mid, I think it was about March, April, that I then bought it second hand, the good old cheeky iPad Air 2. Now, this isn't a case, so it's not really, you can't even see the iPad, but I mean, iPads, they look pretty similar. So this, yeah, and it has indeed got the little black bar on the side, which means it's location enabled. So there's this one here, there's a few reasons, because then I was wanting to do location-based games, which I did and got into with this. There was Delta T and all that. Very fun, and it's capable, as that iPad was not capable, although you could hotspot it, but it was extremely inaccurate it's because this one here is not cellular, it's just regular, whereas this one here is cellular. So this here was brilliant. It played Battlelands perfectly. I'd done lots of my streams. All of my Battlelands trophy pushing was done on this one here, and a lot of videos. I record a huge amount of videos, and then heaps of the Heyday ones started being recorded on this one. But it took me a little while after getting it before I actually started using it lots. But this here, there we go. I'll spoil my favorite one. This here, iPad Air 2 is the best iPad Apple ever released, in my opinion, for value. It, like, obviously the latest ones are faster. I'm not disputing that, but I think iPad Air 2, and I'll explain why, is my favorite iPad of all time. And then anyway, in March, also I'll go back. So when I got this, I was heavily deliberating between getting this iPad, the iPad Air 2, and heavily contrasting that to the iPad Air, this one here. So the iPad Air 5th generation. So, I was like, oh, which one? I'm pretty sure they're both on the was it the A8? I think, yeah, the A8, I'm pretty sure. No, actually, the iPad 5th gen was the A9 or whatnot. And as a comparing, I remember searching, like, which, and they reckoned the iPad 5th gen would have a longer life support, which I'm sure it will, like, in terms of it will last longer from then. So, because this was sort of, but then, of course, the iPad 6th generation came out. So I was really comparing between the iPad Air 2 and the iPad 5th gen. I was very, like, they're both very good options, very valid options. They both had their different pros and cons and whatnot. And I'm happy I made the decision. I ended up going with a second hand. I bought it off Trade Me, this one here, iPad Air 2. So, but man, yeah, okay, another point. These retain their values like insane, like absolutely insane. I'll show you. I'll show you near the end. And it just like they're still selling for hundreds of dollars, hundreds of dollars. So someone could have bought it in 2014 when it came out, used it for like literally 5 years, and then sell it secondhand for like maybe like $100 or $200 less, and still like get hundreds of dollars for it. It's insane. These do not lose their like obviously they do lose some value, but if you in New Zealand, these here are selling for hundreds of dollars. Like it's crazy. Like because people get like bought it, use it for years, and then sell it. It's just because they don't make them anymore, but it's still significantly cheaper and still a valid option, and it's still supported. So anyway, there's that, and I'll get back to why I love it so much. And then and so I was tossing up between iPad Air 2, 5th gen. I went with iPad Air 2. iPad Air 6, I think it was I don't know if it'd been announced or that I'd maybe read about it, but I thought no, I won't go with that because like brand new will cost heaps. And so I ended up going with iPad Air 2. And then in March 2019, I got this one here, iPad Air 3. And so the iPad Air 3, because like for example, there's a few reasons why I got it. Because I was like doing a heap of YouTube stuff, and so then I thought it would be handy to have like the two iPads, as in the sense that that one there wasn't very like the iPad Air 1 wasn't really super good for recording anymore because it wouldn't keep up in that, and I'd maxed out my friends in Battlelands. I got over 1,000 friends, and I had huge amounts of people requesting to add me as a friend. So it's like, okay, and the iPad Air 2 by this stage, as of that point, it was 4.5 years old, and whatnot, although it would still stay supported, but I thought it'd be handy to have, like, a new one that's, like, the ultra fast and will just, like, last non-stop in terms of support and all that, and so I got this one, and it's been wonderful. It's still the one that's been sold, and should last, hopefully, till 2024 or whatnot. Hopefully. And so, but then you never know, like, they might give it less support, so it hasn't even been out for a year yet. That's insane. Oh, it's almost been out for a year. But yeah, it's been very, very good. There we go. So I've got that. And yeah, so that's worked out great. But yeah, also they could have games that, I doubt they'll have games that exceed, like, the capacity of what the iPad Air 3 can handle, because that means every prior generation can't handle it very much. So yeah, I love the iPad Air line. It's my favorite line. So there's the four lines. There's the iPad line, which was the original, starting way back in 2010. There's the iPad Mini line, the iPad Pro line, and the iPad Air line. So the four lines. So yeah, the iPad line, that's just the standard default line. And then there's, as of 2015, they then had the iPad Pro line. Now, the Pro line was just, like, for me, way too expensive. Like, it's, like, they're literally, like, over $1,000. Like $2,000. I didn't even, like, take notice of them when they came out. It was sort of, I was just, like, okay, no. And plus, I don't even know if I want to play it on a device that is that huge. And then the iPad Air, what I love about it, because I've had the 1, 2, and 3, which was coincidental, because I could have just as well have gone with a 5th gen iPad and then not got the iPad Air 3, and I would have just had the original iPad Air. But yeah, the iPad Airs, I love them the best as a line, because they've got a lot of the features of the iPad Air, of the Pros, that like, really fast and all that, but they haven't got that price tag attached, the mid-range, and I like it, because it's still really high quality, long, it's got a longevity in terms of, it's got good as value that will last a long time, and so it's just this brilliant in between thing. It's not, way too, and for example, I don't use Apple Pencil. I know some would, but I don't need like the absolute max features for an iPad. It's like, I just need it, for, like, gaming. I want it to be fast. I want it to, I wish it had a slightly better camera, but it doesn't. But that's okay. And the audio jack's on the other side. But the audio, so it was the 4 speakers. But that's okay. It's still wonderful as it is, and I just really like it. And then iPad Air, the mini line, I think, I don't know. I'm sure that'd be good value, but I think that'd be too. I prefer it bigger than smaller, and so I figure, and so, like, iPad Mini is, like, smaller than the. I mean, that would have been fine, but I think iPad size is a nice size for gaming. I'm sure iPad Mini is as well, because yeah, it perplexes me how some people are so good on phones. It's like, it's so small, but yeah, and so iPad. And so then I thought, nah, not iPad Airs. Not to say that not iPad Minis. Not to say that Minis aren't good, but I just thought, no, too small. And then when I compared iPads versus iPad Airs, I'm like, I think it's worth a little bit of extra cost for like much, faster and better in that. But at the same time, I'm not going pro level, no. And so yeah, iPad Airs with a bang smack perfect one in the middle. And so that there is why I have the iPad Airs. Now the iPad Air 2, what I love about it is it's this perfect. It's so brilliant. It's this perfect balance. Okay, so you look at now. One thing I did consider to be pretty unfair. Which is in favor of me, but as in the iPad Air 3 and the iPad Air 2 were released on the same day, and then this one lost support. I mean, that's a big oof. That seems a little bit unfair, considering they're released on the same day. I don't know the reasoning for that. Was the iPad Air 2 just scraped in there to then get iOS 13 and that, and not that I necessarily think iOS 13 is wonderful. I don't necessarily. It's iPad OS. I didn't learn that till not long ago, till like at the end of last year. I think it was November. I learnt that. I didn't know that separated. But then it's a little bit frustrating why they have the iPad OS, and because I take it that they're still going to update them at exactly the same rate in terms of all the basic features. They're so annoying because there's way more people that have iPhones than have iPads, and so then when you search up, like iOS 13 recording problem or whatnot, then then it's like, oh, but yeah, that's for the phones, and it's very similar. So normally you can search it up, but then it's like there's not many people that write detailed articles or detailed videos on iPadOS. I'm sure there's some, but not nearly as many as with the iOS and that. And so yeah, that has more people covering it. But it's still there, both of them are good options because I could see why they wanted to split it in the sense that there was different features available to one and not to the other and that. So it made sense why they split it. So yeah, it's called iPadOS now for the iPads. So yeah. So and anyway, so the iPad Air 2, I had a thought and then I forgot it about like with the. Oh yeah, that's right, the screen recording problem. It's gone in iOS 13. There used to be one in iOS. Viva Video. It was such a wonderful application. I had it. Umit Ukid, Heyday, top player in the world. And Nudie, both top players. He had it as well. I saw it on his iPad in one of his videos, and I had it. It was such a brilliant, beautiful application, Viva Video, and because there used to be this audio problem with iPads, and you record something, and you could hear the audio on the iPad, but if you transferred to the computer, the audio you couldn't hear. It was so annoying. So then there was this brilliant application, this app called Viva Video, and then they had you could get a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription, which I thought it was so cheap for what it did, because it was such an annoying problem that the audio didn't transfer. So I think this was iOS 11, maybe iOS 12 as well. I loved iOS 10. I wasn't a big fan of iOS 11. But yeah, and then I think 12 was fine because I got used to it being like 11 or whatnot. And then, yeah, 13's. I like the dark theme or whatnot. There we go. Da, 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 da. Apparently it saves battery. That's what I read, but I'm not sure if that's accurate. I think it is. Well, anyway. So, yeah, what was I saying? So the iPad, the Viva Video was so brilliant, and it was I think like 19.99 New Zealand dollars for like a whole year, and I was like every video I was processing through it. All my Go City ones, they were all processed through it. All my Battlelands ones, they were all processed through it, and it was brilliant because I could just trim off the start and the end. So I'd go like, what is up, everybody? And sometimes I'd like wouldn't say it immediately, so there'd be a little gap, so I'd cut that bit off, and at the end there'd be me like scroll down and then stop the recording, so I could just trim that off, and then the audio issue would be fixed. But then the Viva Video just this year has made it so you can't export to the gallery. So it's like, why did you do that? You were just a brilliant application. And man, I feel like they will lose so many people over that. It was so brilliant, but they got rid of it. So that was like really annoying. But so I don't use Viva Video anymore. I don't think a lot of people that were using it for that purpose will anymore, but now the audio issue's fixed, so I don't need it. But it was a really helpful one because you just trim it down and all that. But now I often just record through OBS like I've done with all the Royal Rivals videos, and so I just like have a reflecting record rather than record directly on the device. But I do still sometimes, like with the location-based ones, I have to record directly on the device unless someone was carrying around a computer, and that wouldn't work very well. So anyway, iPad Air 2 is just there we go. I still got a bit to say about it. It's just amazing because it's still under support, which to me isn't a huge deal, but at the same time it still amazes me. It's like this device was released like 5 years ago in 4 months. What a guess! No, it's right there. And it's still it's survived. And I think of all devices released pre 2017, it was like 100% the best choice in the sense that like. Of all of these, these ones aren't supported in that. And the problem was I just felt like the iPad. Oh, what was it? The iPad Air. iPad Air. There we go. This one here. We'll just click here. There we go. It was what core was this again? I checked it before. A7 and the iPad Air 2 was the mini 4. All right, it was the iPad Air 2 was the the mini 3, wait, is this the no, there we go. The mini 3 was the worst chip. So these ones here were all worse than the iPad Air 2, and I felt like they just weren't quite enough to survive the gaming updates, in terms of like Battlelands and that. Like iPad Air, which had the same, these three all had the same chip. So iPad Air 3 was just, iPad Mini was just a really unfortunate, unlucky option. It was because, not only did it have the same chip, the A7, as the iPad Mini 2, but it also lost support, like, at the same time. I mean, that just got such a rough deal. They got such, and it stopped on the same iOS. The iPad Mini 3 got such a rough deal. But I feel like everything pre-iPad Air 2 did not have enough oomph in it, and not enough higher chipset. Like, I think this is just my view. It needed to have like the A8 or more recent, higher than that, to survive the current gaming world with games. Because I felt like, because obviously I haven't tried it on much, but I felt like Battlelands is like a great, like test game. Like, because there's a lot of games that are sort of like Battlelands and that, and it's like, if you can't handle Battlelands, then it's just, you're not going to survive. Like, it's no guarantees iPad Air 2 will survive, in a year worth of, newer games that require higher and higher capacities to run them and that. But as of 2020, 6 years on, well, 5 and 4 months, 5 and a third. So 5 years and a third on, iPad Air 2 still managing that. But pre this, iPad Air 1 just, it met the specifications to play games like Battlelands, but it just wasn't great. It's still wonderful, so these three were all in the same box. It's still wonderful for things like, I can't believe iPad Gen 4 was only released like a year earlier. It's still great for games like Heyday. It still works. It's still fine. It's not quite as fast, but it really doesn't matter in Heyday. It's still totally fine to play games like Heyday, and it's obviously, it's not redundant. iPad Air is wonderful. iPad Air Mini 2 is wonderful. iPad Mini 3 is wonderful. They're still great devices, but in terms of gaming in 2020, for some games, not all, but it will become more and more games, because it's not like games are going to start using less and less, RAM, probably. It will be like more and more that it will require device, with the iPad Air 2 just, like, not only, it's just the perfect cut. It literally is. I just noticed that. From blue down is sort of iPads that can handle gaming in 2020. Mobile gaming in 2020, like virtually any. So I take it would be fine playing like COD Mobile and stuff like that, or Fortnite Mobile as well, if it can handle Battlelands, although the COD's probably more intensive. But from the blue line down are iPads that can survive and are basically, you can still play any game you want on them in 2020. Whereas like the grey ones, which is just an ironic cut, but it's an accurate cut, are just ones that just can't quite just survive nearly as well as that. Man, this video is supposed to be, I literally thought, in my mind, this was going to be like a 3-minute video. Like, what is up? I just tell you these, and then iPad Air 2 is the best, boom. And then look at me talking now. Okay, so, but yeah, the blue's that perfect cut of devices that are so good. And just, so that's that. So it's, it's still supported, and it's still capable of gaming, and it's still like, if you'd bought it like right back in 2014, it would be such good value. Like, I don't know how much it was, but you could still use it today. It was just such a brilliant option right from 2014. And when I tell, if I ever like am giving advice on someone what iPad they should get, and often, it's not, in general, I probably would not buy the latest I don't know. It depends on how much you can save with getting it second hand. Like, if it's almost nothing, if it's negligible, then it's not worth it. You might as well go new. But if it's like, hundreds of dollars, and it's like, well, actually, if someone's taking good care of it, a second-hand device like my iPad Air 2, this right here, which I don't know how many years worth of use it had before that, it's still wonderful and works brilliantly. And so I basically would suggest anyone getting a new iPad that wants to play the games of like Battlelands, or similar, or games like that, you'd want an iPad Air 2 or more recent. But I feel like iPad Air 2 is just brewing because it was really so early. It was just so early. It was like ahead of its time. iPad Mini and that, released like a full year later. I think this one here, if we go like this, had the same chip as the M8. Was it up here? So I think that was the same one that there we go. Yeah. So there was the A8. Was the A8X? I'm not sure if the A8X was better. We'll click on that. I'll just have a look. So I'm not sure. I don't know. Yeah, AX. I'm not sure which was, but as in, for example, this one released a whole year later, still has like the same as the iPad Air 2, and then the other ones released around that time were just Pros, which were just you didn't get those anyway. So assuming you don't get Pros, well, look at this big blue section. 1, 2, 3 of them are Pros. So if you rule and you're not getting Pros, you rule out the Pros. The iPad Air Mini 4 versus iPad Air 2. You might as well get the iPad Air 2 because it's like bigger and it's like the same speed, and so it's like, okay, so then all you have is just the iPad Air 2 all the way to the 5th generation iPad, which then again is actually a good option. But I mean, like, that was released, and I'm not saying iPad Air Pros aren't necessarily a good option. It's just for most people iPad Air Pro is not going to be the way to go. And so I mean, like, so then I start, and that's where I started the comparison. I didn't compare when I was looking to buy, an iPad when I was looking in 2018, in which only these ones existed. I decided I wouldn't get the ones in grey, although at the time they weren't in grey. Those 3 weren't in grey. But I mean, these might have been blue because they figured out early in advance that But I decided I don't want to get these because that's why I was buying a new one. Because the iPad Air, which is the same speed as these ones approximately, couldn't handle it. But then the iPad Air. So I decided not to get those 3, right? And so then I was like looking at the different blue ones. I'm like, well, I'm not going to get a Pro, so they're all gone. And then I decided iPad Air 2 definitely over iPad Air. So then, and it was sort of, I think, I don't even know if the iPad 6th gen was out. So to me, it was just an obvious choice between iPad Air 2 or 5th gen. Now, the 5th gen is a good option, but I mean, this was years later. So, I mean, this one here, I feel like it was just unchallenged from when it was released all the way for like 2.5 years. It was just hands down the best option, like just hands down. It was just such a great option. And 2.5 years later, and then the 5th generation, I still which I think has a faster chip. I'm not sure. I'll just check that. If we click here. And this way I get so many tabs. I open new ones rather than A9. Yeah, so that one did actually have a faster chip or whatnot. But at the same time, it was I can't remember for sure, but I think iPad Air 2 would have been cheaper because it was much older. Yet it wasn't that much. It was very similar to the iPad 5th gen. And when choosing between them, I went with the iPad Air 2 in 2018. So I feel like and so the comparison between this one and this one released years later, it was still a fairly equal comparison. And so and then you fast forward and the 6th gen. I think the 6th gen would be better than the iPad Air 2. I don't know, but I mean, that was released like 3.5 years later, and when it came out 3.5 years later, it was better than the iPad 2, but then it's like, well, it would be brand new cost and all that, and the iPad Air 2 was still this. It's because it's a great thing that it's such an old product, because then people are like, oh, it's older, so then well, theoretically the price goes down. It kind of hasn't. Amazon, yes, a little bit, but it's still quite high. It's insanely high for what it is. So, and it's kind of a plus con. Like, it's kind of cool that it's retained its value so many years later. Yeah, it's cool if it goes down because then it's cheaper in that. But it's just incredible that years. This is just in 2020. 5.5 years later, this is just absolutely pulling it. It's just absolutely nailing it. So many years later, and then even in 2020. I would say it's not a bad option, because I mean, if you get these, you generally have to get them new, and even if you don't get them new, if the maximum someone could have it and be selling it is less than a year, in which case you won't get hugely discount on it. So even in 2020, I would still suggest it as a good option, because I'd say, well, maybe the 6th generation. I haven't compared them well enough, but I mean, it would depend on the price. If they're exactly the same, I'd probably go 6th generation iPad. But if it's like $200, $300 more for the iPad 6th gen, I'd say actually I'd go iPad Air 2, to be honest. So yeah, I just think it's just this wonderful one that's lasted so long. It's an absolute relic. It's an absolute quality device that just it has good quality content. It just works really well so many years later. And I'll just quickly show you the prices now if we come up here. This year, and it is all New Zealand dollars, by the way, so that one there. And it depends on how many gigabytes it has and whether it has cellular. So it's like 300 by now. That means you can instantly buy it for that price. This one here is an auction, iPad Air. Oh, that's a case. There's a lot of cases show up here. See, people are selling iPad Air. I mean, it has got 3G, but I mean, 16 gigabyte. There's people that sell it at horrendous price. Well, this one here, right? So 64 gig, which is solid. It's solid. It's cellular, which is really good. But $450 in 2020. It's like, oh my goodness, this is just retained value. Like, I don't know if that's necessarily going to sell. They're charging a lot for that. But it's like 5.5 years later, they're still selling for, and I don't know how much they would have got it for, but I mean, they're still going to get hundreds of dollars back. Like, people, I'd say they're still selling. I'd say they're still selling for like, but it's hard to say like which one. Like, okay, 32 gigabyte one with cellular are still selling for over 300 New Zealand dollars, so over 200 US dollars. These are still selling for in 2020. I just think it's just insane. I mean, it's good. It just shows what a quality product it was and is, and that not that reason alone, but I reckon it enforces the idea of what such a good product it was. So that, folks, man, this was literally going to be. It was literally going to be like a 4-minute video, but that, folks, is why. But I talked about a lot of other topics while I was at it. But yeah, that's why, folks, this here is my favorite iPad of all time ever, especially for gaming and YouTube. It's just wonderful, and I know obviously other people have different things, like if they want to use an Apple Pencil with it. Obviously, iPad Air 2 is not going to cut the mustard. iPad Air 3 can support first-gen pencil. And so, but yeah, but for the vast majority of causes and purposes, this is just a wonderful all-round device. It's fast, it's still supported unbelievably, and it's good enough to do what basically most people want. And so, yeah, that is indeed the video on it. I hope it was is a bit interesting. I mean, I tapped, and again, I always think, I feel like things would be far more interesting. I mean, I don't. It's hard for me to perceive myself as to how much is that interesting, how much is that ramble, and all kind of stuff. But yeah, I do feel like in years, like give it like 20 years, I feel like videos like this will be more interesting in 20 years, because like by then, just imagine how big this chart will be. It will be like double, triple the size, and it'll actually be like like, for example, I saw an article of someone in there researching like the gaming computers they had in their time, which they referred to like 2008, and that when Windows 7 came out. And at the end of it, they said, it's 2008, 2010 kind of era. And at the end of the article, they said, "I can't believe how difficult it was to research my own time period. As how hard it was to research what was." And it's just like, it's so true. Like, and now it's like, it just seems all like this. But then if I tried to make this very video in 10 years, I'd be like, I honestly can't remember what I thought. Like, obviously, I'd still have stuff vague memories. But I mean, as of right now, in the moment, this is my opinion on it. And my usage of iPad Air is not super old. Like, I'm still using it as of 2018, so just 1.5 years ago. So it's fresh. I can give you accurate, But if you wind the clock forward to like 2030 and you're like, oh, what was the iPad Air like? And when you stop using it, I'll be like, oh, I can't really remember too well. But as of now, in the moment, it's sort of, iPads are sort of like, it's kind of new. It's all relative. I guess YouTube's kind of new as well. It's all relative, because I mean, well, it's only been 10 years since the very first one came out, and I wish I'd got that graph up. I had this. There we go. If you ask for it in the comments in 20 years, I'll try to get you a photo of the graph. It was just basically when what iOS devices got unsupported. So I combined all the iPads and the iPhones and the iPod Touch. But I do feel like in years this will be way more interesting, because it'll be like, oh, that was the perspective of someone on iPads way back in 2020. When it was just getting started, and I could just point out some different things about them, which in years it will be hard to like think. It'll be hard to think about what we would have thought about now. That's my thought. That's what I reckon. I don't know if it's accurate, but that's just, I don't know. I just feel like in 20, 30 years, this will be way more interesting than what it is now. Because currently I'll premiere this afterwards, and a few people turn up. Shout out to Lynn and the others that will be there, and then for it won't be super interesting, and maybe it won't be interesting in 30 years. Yeah, I don't know. Well, it will kind of for me because I'll be like, oh, that's what I thought 30 years ago. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, that's just that's my thoughts for today, and yeah, beautiful iPad Air 2 for the win. My favorite iPad ever so far. Apple, keep them coming. I'm looking forward to trying out future ones. Yeah, and then in 30 years it'll be like, oh yeah, I still have the iPad. Imagine I hope I have this. I hope I still have this in 2030. I hope I do. I actually hope I do. I hope I have all 3 of these iPads. Like, I don't generally chuck anyway, I don't generally chuck out technology stuff. I just keep it, and because you don't really have a use for it. But yeah. Anyway, let's go to stuff right there. It's 12:45 a.m. Oh my goodness, this video went for a long time. Anyway, it's the 11th of, and I check for a Windows update. It's the 11th of March 2020. So I hope you have a wonderful, beautiful rest of your day, and I'll see you all soon for another video. See you next time.